Hi guys, thanks for joining. We just wanted to do the quick daily roundup. Obviously on the weekend, myself and Yi covered off on various things around all the regions. Particularly of note was in Australia, there was tens of thousands of people in an anti-lockdown, anti-vax protests in various cities, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, Hobart, so pretty much the whole country, showing that Australia can be as mad as America when it wants to be. Also in Indonesia, there was basically a West Papua National Liberation Army group opened fire at Jakarta police station just in the highlands, probably 30, 40 miles inland from the Freeport area. A lot else happened over the weekend but I'll skip over that. There was also a bit of an incident in the Philippines where 2 police officers were killed and 4 others injured in a bomb attack in northern Samar, which is Samar Island, which is the massive island between Mindanao and then the island that Manila's on. And getting to what we're covering today, there's been some more separatist violence in Papua. 1 Indonesian soldier was killed after the TPNPB, which is the West Papua Liberation Army, attacked Surasura military district. Now that's Karamal or a small military unit at the district level. Basically, this is an extension of the issues where the TPNPB are targeting authorities in the Yahukima area. That's in the east of the most eastern province of Papua, which is the most eastern province of Indonesia. So you've got Papua New Guinea on the far east of the island in New Guinea. Then in the centre, on the Indonesian side, you've got Papua, and at the west of that, you've got another Indonesian province called West Papua. This is an extension where they're basically saying if the government authorities, be they Papuan Indonesians or straight-haired Indonesians, continue to allow the military to build facilities, then they're going to continue to attack. Moving up into North Asia, basically there's some really freezing temperature and heavy snow warnings in various parts of the country. From memory, it's areas like Inner Mongolia, Tibet, right down to the lower parts of the Yangtze River, and cities such as Hefei, Wuhan, and Nanjing. Also in China, there's the Foreign Exchange Committee told the banks to limit speculative foreign exchange trading. This comes after all the banks have been trading because the yuan climbed to a 6-year high. Also on the economic side of things, up in Japan, the government or the Prime Minister's cabinet approved a 55.7 trillion yen or about $490 billion US dollar stimulus package. They also basically agreed to release oil from the country's reserves. In North Korea, more than 100,000 citizens are currently in isolation inside COVID-19 quarantine facilities. So either they managed to keep it out for a long time or managed to keep it under cover, but now it's running fairly rampant. In South Korea, there was 2 Chinese and 7 Russian military aircraft entered into the South Korean air defence identification zone, known as the CUDs, without notice. So that's all heating up. I'll skip over some of the minor countries. Brunei and Cambodia clients can contact us direct if they've got particular issues on that, or you guys can get a detailed brief if you need it. But in Indonesia, several residents and community leaders are calling for a new city called City of Central Tangerang. And so companies with large factories in that area need to be aware of that push and pull situation that's potentially going to affect licensing and the other niceness that Indonesia is known for. Of really significant note in Indonesia is that the National Counter-Terrorism Agency has warned of infiltration efforts of suspected Jemaah Islamiyah members in various public and in private institutions, and these include mainstream religious organisations, non-government organisations, charities, and government institutions. Now, particularly in light of the fall of Afghanistan and links between Jemaah Islamiyah and the Islamic State, various other terrorism groups. That's something to keep a real lookout on for the clients with significant footprints in Indonesia. Also in northern Sumatra, and I'll bring this up specifically because my wife's paternal side's from there. There's been massive floods, in Tebing Tinggi city, which has left several hundred houses inundated with water. In Malaysia, the Johor state government said about 1,500 travellers are going to be using the land vaccinated travel lane across the two borders with Singapore in the first week. In Myanmar, it's continuing to go from hot to very hot to scalding hot, with about 80 soldiers killed in clashes with the People's Defence Forces between 17 and 19 November. Also, 2 military Air Force helicopters equipped with machine guns and with 100 military troops on board landed in Rakhine State also 3 days ago on the 19th of November. And that's going to be a military government that's losing a lot of people, seems hell-bent on drawing the flak, so it's going to cop plenty of flak. A couple of other things of note: Singapore's vaccinated travel lane with India will start on the 29th of November, and also they're winding back on support measures that have been propping up businesses and workers. Finally, there's a bit of a unionism issue happening with FedEx getting taken on by unions. Unions have decided to strike. FedEx has locked them out. FedEx is probably going to end up with a little bit more than a bargain for there down in Australia with the unionism. We'll see that. Of course, they've got a $20-odd billion profit during COVID, so they'll be prepared to ride it out. But about 8 or 9 of their competitors have actually acknowledged a wage increase, so there could be a bit of an issue for FedEx coming, that they probably misunderstood the power of unionism in Australia. Finally, in New Zealand, beautiful rugby club there, Pukekohe, but there's been some violence in the Pukekohe region, and 3 people were injured in a suspected Molotov cocktail attack. Authorities did arrest a suspect, but I'd suggest there's a lot more behind that. Well, there's 3 days of East Asia wrapped up in a few minutes. Over to you, Uday, if you could just give us a brief on South Asia.
Sure, Paul, thanks. So in India, farmers' union said that they will continue their protests after the until a minimum support price for crops is guaranteed. This comes days after the Modi government repealed the controversial farm laws last week on Friday. Moving on to Bangladesh, there's more protests across the country today. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party is demanding that the ruling Awami League let Khalida Zia go overseas for medical treatment. There have been protests over the issue over the last few days also. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the Petroleum Dealers Association announced a nationwide strike on November 25th. Also in Pakistan, the Pakistan Democratic Movement, which is a coalition of some opposition parties, they're meeting today to discuss how to increase their support and hold larger protests. They're also considering a long march from Lahore to Islamabad, which is interesting. They're taking a leaf out of the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan's playbook. Speaking of the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, their leader Saad Rizvi yesterday called on the public to vote for TLP in the next general elections. The next elections are to be held in 2023, which isn't that far away. And some members of the ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party are trying to do some outreach to the TLP. So there's rumors of a potential alliance between TLP and the PTI, because the TLP is the one party that can eat away at the PTI's vote bank, especially in Punjab. The other opposition parties don't really have any clout. Bhargav, do you have anything to add to this?
Thanks, Uday. I do not know where to start. Is the TLP stealing the whole playbook of Imran Khan, or are they just stealing one of the footnotes there in the book? Well, I must say the next election is going to be really, really interesting, because the Tehreek-e-Insaf Pakistan, that is PTI's support base, is primarily within the new age younger generation who are tired of the dual party musical chair that is between Pakistan People's Party as well as Pakistan Muslim League led governments which were in power since 2007 onwards. Now, if that is the case, how will it board with them if the current incumbent in Imran Khan led government is allying themselves with TLP, which is in my opinion that Taliban light, that should appeal to the conservative side of the society. Then the question is, what part of Pakistan will be swayed by the conservative-led government or TLP-led government or any accord with the TLP-led government to form the government at the center or the federal level? The next election is going to be a real churner, I would say, Uday. So anything to follow that?
No, I think you've covered it well. I think there is a moderate section in the PTI, and I'm not sure where exactly they can go because, as you mentioned, the PMLN and Pakistan People's Party, there's a very strong anti-incumbency sentiment. So it's definitely going to be interesting times ahead in Pakistan, and we'll be following that closely. But that's it from South Asia from us.
Thanks for that. Over to you, Bassel.
Thank you, Bhargav. In EMEA, we have over 43 developments today. In Iran alone, the Iranian Navy seized 150,000 liters from a foreign ship attempting to smuggle it into the Persian Gulf. In Iraq, a series of explosions using improvised explosive devices targeted US-led coalition convoys in Al-Diwaniyah yesterday. Going over to Lebanon, the internal security forces thwarted an attempt for 82 illegal immigrants to cross the sea and go to Europe. If we go over to Africa, in Southern Africa, especially in South Africa, the workers went on strike. Around 18,000 workers went on strike in Walmart and Massmart, demanding higher wages and better conditions of work. In Nigeria, the Nigerian Drug Law Enforcement Agency seized around 6,043 kilograms of illicit drugs. At the same time, in DRC, we have over 189 inmates that escaped a prison in Matadi. In DRC also, the president stopped issuing and trading mining permits until the mining registry was audited. That's it from the EMEA region.
Thanks, Bassel. In Europe, people seem to like protesting of recent actually. So there were protests in Belgium as well as in Netherlands. There were 40,000 people assembled in Brussels to protest the COVID-19 restrictions. And in Netherlands, they were protesting the COVID-19 restrictions while also injuring 5 policemen. In France, the protests were on 2 different things. The bikers were protesting the parking fees, while others were protesting to ensure women are safer in the country and urging the government to bring in stronger laws. For a change, there were no major protests in Italy, though there were statements by the authorities, regional authorities, on how to safeguard themselves during the against the COVID-19 concerns. Paul, that's pretty much it from Europe. Any inputs or final words?
Oh, look, I want to talk about the paradox of the media. I'm not sure it's the same in your sub-regions, guys, but Thailand in particular is just getting absolutely smashed by the Western media, which is showing its absolute inability to see initiative and enterprise. Thailand has done magnificently to open up the country, to live with COVID. The demonstrations, yep, they exist. Yep, there's some issues behind the scenes politically, but Thailand continues to be a brilliant country to live, a brilliant country to do business. It's got very much made massive inroads over the last 3 decades to clean up what used to be insidious corruption 30 or 40 years ago. It really has got a buoyant economy. I read the media for 2 years while I was absent from Thailand and was coming back to Armageddon, have got back here, and it's a buoyant, thriving economy in Hua Hin, which is one of the quietest spots in Thailand. So I guess it's funny when we hear some potential clients talk about they don't need information because they get everything they need on BBC. I think that probably reflects their personal capacity and capability. to look at matters rationally. And as you highlighted that you've had 50 odd issues in EMEA today and over the weekend, we've had in excess of 60 just in East Asia Pacific. So we're covering over 100 issues a day now, as well as the major assessments that we do, the daily on Myanmar, the fortnightly on Timor-Leste, the fortnightly on Indonesia. So continue to do what you're doing great. You and your teams and your colleagues are just doing brilliant. And today's summary really just gives me a really quick overview, and I'm sure our clients will appreciate it as well. So Bhargav, please make sure we start distributing this to clients as well.
Certainly, Paul. It was issued last Friday, and this will be issued to our clients today as well.
Brilliant. Cheers, chaps. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul.